Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of Goldcast Summer Camp. I'm excited to be here with you all. I'm excited for you all to join us again for a second day of this. We have an incredible conversation coming up with Ashley Faus from Atlassian. In a couple of minutes, I just want to quickly go over some general things about our event and about Summer Camp overall. As you know, like any webinar, this is being recorded. This will be available on demand after the fact. So please make sure after the event's over, you'll have the link. No need to ask. You'll get that. You'll have access to that. We also have a ton of great giveaways that we're doing for you to engage in the event. And so I'm just going to quickly share a slide on that. Let me pull it up real quick. So yesterday we did the same thing, and we have a winner. So Sarah Griffin, if you're joining us today too, congratulations, you won yesterday's little bundle of cool, fun stuff and swag. Someone will be reaching out to you shortly to make sure that they get your information so that you can get access to this. Today, similar thing. We have an awesome little Explorer pack available for the winner. What you have to do is just engage in all the sessions, take part in the polls, chat, etc., and really just engage in the content, and that'll help make sure that you are tuned in and that you are eligible for this amazing giveaway that we're doing today. So before I get into kind of bringing on Ashley and kind of introducing her, this whole thing is a camp theme. So I wanted to share a little bit more about like what camp means to me. And I always think of like songs when I think of camp. I don't know why, but there are two songs specifically. So there's one that's about like Kookaburra singing an old gum tree. I have no idea what song that is. If you know what song that is, please send it in the chat, because I've been wondering and trying to look for it for the last like 20, 30 years. And then the last one is this one that goes like Aiko Aiko one day. And that song is like just always stuck in my head. So if you know what song that is, please post it in the chat, because again, I've been trying to find it. I have no idea what it's called. But these songs have just, they've been in my mind for a long time. And the reason why we're doing this whole summer camp event is because we want to help our customers and all of you win mindshare in the market, right? And we believe video is the best way to actually win mindshare. That's why we have these incredible speakers today, tomorrow, Thursday, even yesterday. And today's focus is around repurposing video content. That's the big theme, because video content, you start with something, but you can just grab way more mindshare if you do more with it. If you amplify the purpose of it across different channels and in different ways. And so if you have experience repurposing long form video content, let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear kind of what your expertise level is. But today, in this session specifically, I'm excited to kind of have Ashley Faus, who leads Lifecycle Marketing at Atlassian, but she's more than that. She's a marketing strategist, she's a content architect, and she's a proud playground enthusiast, which you will all know what that means shortly. She's also an author of an upcoming or maybe already out book around how to create like authentic human connections in marketing in this world of AI. So be on the lookout for that, and make sure you get that book when it's available. But yeah, she's here to really chat through how to create an operating system around repurposing that especially that allows you to kind of adapt in this new kind of AI world with zero clicks and build trust. And so Ashley, I'm excited to have you on, and thank you for helping share your knowledge and expertise with the group, with the campus that we have here today.
Very excited to join the campers here at Goldcast. So thank you so much, Anand, for having me. I believe if I click this slides button, that will give me my presentation, correct?
It should. Let's try it out.
Let's see. Share. All right.
There it is.
Hopefully you guys are seeing that. Awesome. So super excited to be here this morning. And I want to start things off with a little bit of an odd question, but I am hoping that you will indulge me. You can shout it out to your dog or your roommate or your partner. You can put it in the chat, but please just first reaction to this question. What is the best piece of playground equipment? Okay, Jeremy, that got real dark real fast there, sir. Oh, and one, nice to see you. Rope, swing, slide, zip line. Dude, what kind of fancy playground do you have? Slide, monkey bars. Yes, sandbox. Love this. Okay, cool. Curly slide. Again, y'all have some fancy playgrounds in your neighborhoods. Too many to list. Water pools. I don't do the splash pad. The kids these days have the splash pads, and I am very jealous. Okay, some of y'all have very fancy playgrounds. I don't know about all this, right? So the big takeaway from this is that it seems like there is not one best piece of playground equipment. When I've asked this to audiences in the past, I always get a sassy person who says the park bench, right? That like that's the best place to be in the playground. Now, you might be wondering why I am asking you about a playground here at a business conference. And yes, I know it's summer camp, but still, we're talking business here. And I promise we're going to get to that. But for now, let's pretend that you slipped on that splash pad, bumped your head, and we are now in a place where we are talking about the linear funnel. I know you want to hide in your tent. Fear not, I'm going to bring it back around. It's going to get fun again. So at its core, the linear funnel is 3 phases: awareness, consideration, and decision. And what a lot of teams do is they whip out their editorial calendar and they say, I'm going to create 2 pieces of content in awareness, 2 in consideration, 2 in decision. That's 6 pieces of content, publish once per month. I now have 6 months of content strategy. Now, most of you are probably shaking your heads going, it's a little more complicated than that. And you are correct. This is the Google image results for the linear funnel. There's some crazy stuff going on here. We got like 10 different stages. We've tilted it on its side, like it's a lot. So we figured out that we needed a new model. And so what most of us are doing now, especially if we're in SaaS, is a looping decision. And at its core, it's 4 phases: awareness, consideration, purchase, and retention, which is usually some sort of upsell, cross-sell, or expansion motion that for some reason just drops us right back into awareness. I don't know that that makes sense, but that's fine. That's fine. Cool. We're going to add 2 additional pieces of content. That's 8 pieces of content, still published once per month. Now I have 8 months of content strategy. And again, hopefully you are shaking your heads that it's a little more complicated than that. And you are correct, right? This is the Google search results. Ellie with the liar gift, this is correct. But one thing that I think you'll all agree with me on, to me, the scariest image on this screen for me is in the bottom right, which is the Mobius, right? How many of you have ever been stuck in the infinite loop of marketing and sales content? It is terrifying. So I decided that we needed a new model. And originally I came up with a jungle gym. Now, the problem with the jungle gym is that there's really only one goal, and that's to get to the top of the jungle gym. It's still me as a marketer forcing you as the audience to go on the journey that I want you to go on. Which brings us back to the playground. What's the right way to play on the playground? Is it to go slides and then swing and then merry-go-round? Is it to skip the merry-go-round altogether? And what about those people on the park bench that I mentioned I've met in the past, right? Are they using the playground the wrong way? Of course not. And so as marketers, we need to treat the buyer's journey as a playground. People can enter and exit as they please, they can go in any order, and they can engage in content the wrong way. So if we think about pricing as an example of this, it's usually considered a bottom funnel or decision level purchase in the traditional funnel model. But if I'm trying to secure budget, I need to know some basic ballpark pricing about service levels and number of licenses in order to even start my buying journey. So how do we think about this playground? And spoiler alert, you're gonna have to adapt your content. So why is this happening? Well, there's a couple of trends that are driving this. And the first is trust. And so the 2021 Edelman Trust Barometer found that people trust people like themselves more than they trust people with traditional markers of authority. And the 2024 report continues with this, where people say, I trust someone like me more than a technical expert, more than a CEO, more than journalists, and more than government leaders. And 2025 further continues this trend, right? I trust citizens of my country. I trust my neighbors. I trust my CEO. If I know you, if I can have a relationship with you, I can trust you. Now, people also buy from people they trust. This is not just a fluffy, ethereal, nice feeling to have. This affects how people buy or advocate for brands, where they choose to work, how they choose to invest, and even at an institutional level, where the money flows. So when we think about this from a content strategy perspective, we want to showcase the expertise of our people via bylines, social media, speaking engagements, and other assets because we want to show the people behind the screen. If we've got smart people building trust and building relationships, we're a lot more likely to build that relationship in a way that people will buy from us. All right, the next trend, zero-click content. So Amanda Natividad, who is the VP of Marketing at SparkToro, coined this term, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Zero-click content is content that offers valuable, standalone insights or simply engaging material with no need to click. And she put this chart together a couple of years ago, and it still holds true for major platforms across the internet where we would host, share, or distribute our content. And as you can see, in some cases, not only do the platforms penalize external links, they basically don't allow them. So Instagram, for example, still doesn't allow you to put links in your post. You got to put the link in the bio. LinkedIn heavily penalizes the reach on your post if you include an external link. There's all sorts of hacks about put it in the post, do multiple links, put it in the comments, edit the post, right? But it basically mirrors the behavior that the humans want as well. The algorithms hate the external links because they want people to remain on the platform. And the humans kind of hate the external links because they don't want to go somewhere else. They just want to get value right where they already are. And we're seeing this even more with the rise of AI. So Ahrefs found that AI overviews reduce clicks by 34.5% in the search engine results pages. And SEMrush said this, all overviews are reshaping the search landscape in real time. Marketers can no longer rely on rankings alone. You have to create content that will work within the evolving complexities of search, no clicks required. So from a content strategy perspective, we have to think about delivering the right message to the right person at the right time in the right place. They're not going to come to us. We have to go where they are. And finally, we've all heard it, do more with less, right? This quippy little phrase that keeps coming up, but this is a reality. So Ewan McIntyre, who is one of the VPs in the Gartner marketing practice, had this to say about a recent survey. With limited funds, marketing leaders are boosting productivity in order to drive growth. CMOs are leveraging data analytics and technology, particularly AI, in order to squeeze more from static budgets. There you've got it, more with less. The problem is more does not equal better. And so we want to shift our mindset to focus on content velocity, not just content volume. So what is content velocity? It is speed in the right direction. So as we think about this from a content strategy perspective, we need to repurpose for a purpose. We need to be winning the hearts, minds, and wallets of our audience over and over again by thinking about how to deliver the right message in the right place at the right time in the right way. So how do we actually do that, right? We know we need to build this playground. Everything is shifting. So what are our foundations for repurposing? Step one, content depths. So this gives us the opportunity to allow our audience to have the ability to move up, down, and sideways. Next, intent. What is the next action for the audience? Modular content. So this is what we have traditionally called repurposing, and it's matching your formats and channels using decomposition or building blocks. And of course, we got to measure it, right? Attribution is where this all falls down. So we're going to talk about how to have actionable data and insights tailored to the intent and use case. So let's start with our content depths. So there's 3 depths. The first is conceptual, and this is theoretical or philosophical in nature. It deals with the what and the why of the idea, and it helps the audience think about and understand the problem space. Next is strategic. So this is the process, tools, and key knowledge components that must be in place to make that conceptual idea reality. This gives the audience criteria to think about the solution space, and it equips them to do their own research. And finally, tactical. So this is your prescriptive step-by-step instructions, the nitty-gritty things that have to happen to implement the strategy to make the conceptual idea reality. Now, when I present this, a lot of people think that I've just substituted conceptual, strategic, and tactical for awareness, consideration, and decision. But you'll notice that I didn't actually talk about how to buy, where to buy, services, products, etc. So let's see how this comes to life in a real world example about fitness. So most people would agree that it means to be healthy and fit, you probably have to have some combination of diet and exercise. But you're going to answer that question very differently if you're Runner's World versus Muscle and Fitness versus Yoga Journal. So I personally really enjoy bodybuilder style workouts. So let's answer these questions as if we are Muscle and Fitness. Yes, Ellie, with the gifts on point. I love it. So if you are Muscle and Fitness, at a conceptual level, you would say you are healthy and fit if you eat a high protein diet and you have big, strong muscles. At the strategic depth, you might talk about having good form when lifting or different sources of protein. And at the tactical level, this is your 10 tips to build bigger biceps, 5 chicken dinner recipes to try this week. And so as you can see here, as I alluded to earlier, nowhere in there have I mentioned specific products, services, buying, using, logging in, free trials, none of that. But you can easily see how I could sell you personal training, sell you a gym membership, sell you meal planning or meal prep services. I could do something like our famous MQL nurturing with a meal planning template or grocery affiliate links, right? Which leads us to discussing intent. So, how many of you have made these statements, right? The product tour teaches people about our features, therefore it's educational. This tutorial teaches people how to use a feature. Therefore, it's educational. This ebook teaches people about why our cloud products are more secure than our on-premise products. Therefore, it's educational, right? For some reason, we've decided that educational content is the best content. And so we twist ourselves into knots trying to turn everything into education in a tent. I love this. This is excellent puns in the chat. Thank you all. But in reality, you can see here, right? These statements aren't educational. They're about our features. They're how to use a feature. They're about our products, right? So as we think about the in a tent that we need to do to match our content to the needs of our audience, we have to think about the next action for the audience. So let's talk about some intents. Trust or affinity. So this is content that generally builds a sense of trust or affinity at a higher level. And it doesn't really require the audience to take any action. Sure, maybe they share on social. Sure, maybe they pop the link into a Slack chat. But ultimately, all they have to do is think or feel differently about your brand. Next, our favorite as marketers, right? Buy intent. So this is any content that pushes the person to take action to purchase our products or our services. We also love use intent, especially if we're in a SaaS business, right? We always want to see that feature usage or the product usage going up. So this is any content that pushes the person to take action in the product or engage in the services that they already have. Next, help or remediation. So this is content that enables the user to troubleshoot a problem. This might be your documentation. This might be a help desk. This might be your educational articles about, solving a problem. And finally, learn intent. So true learn intent content only requires the consumer to think about what they've consumed. They don't need to take any action to log in, to buy, to troubleshoot a problem. They don't need to do any of that. They just need to think about or implement the behaviors that they've learned. All right, so let's take a look at a real world example. This is from the Atlassian team playbook. So Atlassian, where I work, is a collaboration software, and we are on a mission to unleash the potential of every team. And so to do that, we have a site that actually incorporates a lot of the behavioral practices and processes that teams need to work better together. And you'll see here that on the homepage, there's a variety of different content depths and intent shown in the CTA. So at the very top, we've got the Get It for Free, which is our tactical buy intent CTA if you want to start engaging in our products. Then we've got a strategic learn intent CTA talking about improving your performance. So if we go to one of our plays, objectives and key results, it's about goal setting. And you'll see there's a mix of tactical use intent and tactical learn intent content. And here's where the magic happens, right? Because if you click that watch a video, it actually takes you over to Instagram with tactical learn intent content and tactical use intent content for the framework. And so you can see here that this person is giving you these tips to make your goals more effective. And so you can read or you can watch and consume this information in the way and the depth that makes sense to you. And we've got multiple other videos that do stand alone with a mix of tactical and strategic learn intent and use intent content. All right, modular content. So we know that in the playground, to allow people to chart their own path, we've got to have quite a lot of content for them to explore. So there's two different ways to do this. Decomposition, where you start with one big piece of content and break it down, is the standard. This is how we've gotten the word snackable content. I actually dislike that word snackable and prefer modular, because it actually allows you to do things with the building blocks, which is where you take multiple smaller pieces of content and you put them together. So of course there's pros and cons, right? Pros of decomposition: you've got a cohesive narrative and an easy editorial calendar because you're starting with one big asset and just breaking it down into smaller pieces as you go throughout the quarter. The cons: it can be very expensive up front because it requires a lot of time, money, and expertise to create that big meaty piece of content. And because it's so expensive up front, it's difficult to pivot. If you put it out on the market and it flops, it's really hard to start from scratch. Building blocks. So pros: it is more scalable upfront because you can invest in smaller increments from both a time and money perspective. And this allows you to experiment faster. If you're not 100% sure what's going to resonate with the audience or what the right format or channel is, doing it in smaller bits helps you get that information quickly. Cons: it can be difficult to maintain the narrative, especially if you're doing lots of smaller bites of content over time. And then it can obviously be harder to fit together later, right? If you have multiple different sizes of Legos, some of the Legos are going to struggle to fit. So I love this example. It is actually with Goldcast. And in this case, it was a written example, although I have done video examples with them as well. And this is an opportunity to help build trust with the audience by showcasing the people behind the screen. So I wrote a post about working with an AI-assisted video tool, which was Goldcast. And I actually noted that AI can't fix bad source content. So I gave a bunch of tips to improve your source content. And Lindsay McGuire, who's a former teammate on the Goldcast team, reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I don't think people consider it. I would love to turn this into a blog post for the Goldcast audience." And I said, "I would love that too. I've actually written about this in the past. I have a whole other set of tips in this LinkedIn post." So I sent her the link. So Lindsay and her team created a blog post out of those two LinkedIn posts that I had written, along with some tips from the Goldcast team because they're experts in this space. Pulled it all into a blog post, which then gave them a piece of content featuring an expert, and it gave me a halo of credibility because a brand was amplifying my content. So all the way around, this was great. It was a lighter lift for them and me because they built pieces from smaller pieces, and it gave credibility to both sides. Now, metrics. This is always where things get tough, right? How do we measure? Let's talk about some principles. We need to have leading and lagging indicators, not just one single, is it buying, is it working now? Next, we have to tailor our metrics. So match the intent, the format, and the channel. Intuitively, we know this, right? It makes no sense to have watch time or average watch time on an article, and it makes no sense to have scroll depth on a video. And yet sometimes we end up with just a standard metric for everything. And finally, your time horizons. So looking at your trends, seasonality, and granularity. So if you are in retail, you know that the biggest months of the year are November and December. If you're a B2B SaaS business who works with colleagues in Europe, you know that November and December are probably going to be pretty dead because everyone's on vacation. So don't freak out if you have a month-over-month drop from November to December or October to November. It's seasonal. From a granularity standpoint, if your sales cycle is 6 months, don't try to measure results in 2 weeks. Of course, it's going to take longer. So be cognizant of your time horizons. This is a snapshot of the different types of leading and lagging indicators for each of our intents. So again, you'll notice that trust or affinity has very different metrics than buy or use. So I want to close with one last example from the city of Vienna, and they ran an excellent campaign called Enjoy Vienna, not #Vienna. They specifically did not want people to take pictures and share them online. So what did they do instead? They created this microsite and they brought in some influencers and said, okay, we want you to focus in and go on a specific itinerary. If you like wine and food, here's an itinerary for you. If you're outdoorsy, here's some of our best trails and hikes. If you like museums and art, here's the places to go. And they featured very specific businesses for certain lengths of time. And then this is the kicker. They said, only take 10 photos. Come to the visitor center, pick up an instant camera, and only take 10 physical photos. So can you imagine how much richer your vacation would be if you were not constantly on your phone trying to get the perfect photo for Instagram? And then they topped it off. They ran out-of-home ads in digital hubs like New York and Silicon Valley where they said, enjoy Vienna, not hashtag Vienna. So how would you measure this? Right? You don't have the digital impressions that you would normally have. You don't have the brand mentions on social media. So they could potentially measure an uptick in visa applications or foot traffic to the visitor center and number of instant cameras that were picked up. They could talk directly to the businesses and ask about the foot traffic in the business, the revenue, and average check size for some of these people. And those metrics are actually a lot more meaningful because it shows that the humans showed up, they were present, and they were delighted. And ultimately, when you are engaged and delighted, you will spend more money. So, who's ready to play? I hope you will join me in transforming your audience journey from a linear funnel or a looping decision journey into a playground. And I hope you'll take this mindset into the next 2 sessions, which are very tactical ways for you to be able to repurpose your content to fill out this playground. And if you would like to continue the discussion, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And as Anand alluded to, my book is actually available now. You can order it on Amazon or from the Kogan Page website. So I would love to open it up for questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That was amazing, Ashley. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of great insight. I was taking notes. I was jotting down things that we could do on our side as well at Goldcast. There's a lot of great questions that came in. If you have questions for Ashley, in the top right, there's a Q&A section. Feel free to add in your questions there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We have about like 7 or 8 minutes. So I'll kick off. And Ashley, if you see anything that you like and you want to just kind of, start sharing, then go for it. But I'll start kicking us off with a couple that I saw. Sure. Here's one from, let's see, here we go. Ashin, who said, how do you adapt a single idea to perform across TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and email without sounding repetitive? I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Sure. So Ashin, I would actually step back and ask a foundational question of, is your audience actually on all of those platforms? Assuming they are, the next question I would ask is, why are they on each of those platforms, right? A lot of times for TikTok, people are there to be entertained. YouTube, they're often there to solve a specific problem, to learn how to do something. On LinkedIn, they tend to be in more of a professional mindset. They're looking for insights. They're looking to learn from a professional perspective. Email, obviously, it varies depending on what you've trained your audience for. So those are very different intents. And I would actually ask whether or not the idea translates across all of those. I think it can. And I would go back to the content depths, right? Conceptual is probably better for something like LinkedIn and email. Strategic is probably better for email. And then the tactical is probably better for something like YouTube, right? So depending on the idea, the different depths might be how you adapt it. And then obviously the formats, right? So short form video on TikTok, this might be the like super tactical 5 funny things that people make mistakes and then hit them at the very end with this one, like, and this is how to solve it. But I think going back to the foundations of, is the audience on those platforms? What are they looking at? What are they expecting to get from each of those platforms? And then you can adapt the ideas from a content depth perspective and an angle perspective to each of those platforms.
That's a good answer. And I think there's actually another question that was very similar. So I'll bring that up on stage just so everyone can see. But the question here was from Eric Smith, who asked, how do you make sure you're not cannibalizing your traffic from one another, especially if you're repurposing the same content across different channels? it sounds like you were saying like be more intentional about how you use those channels. Is there anything else that you would add based on this question, Ashley?
Sure, sure. There's a little graphic that I posted a while back on LinkedIn, and it's basically this huge circle of like the amount of content you create, and then there's a smaller circle that's the amount of content you actually distribute effectively, and then there's a smaller circle that's like the amount of content your audience sees, and then a smaller circle that is the amount of content your audience remembers, and then there's a super tiny circle that is, you know, how the content your audience is going to be angry about seeing more than once, right? The reality is that very few audiences actually have a significant overlap between LinkedIn, TikTok, email, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, wherever else, right? I have actually presented a version of this deck multiple times over the last 6 years, and I still get people who are like, I've never heard of the playground. I'm like, guys, I've been talking about this for 6 years. Like it's been a long time. And people say they've never heard of it, right? I post about this on LinkedIn. I've done videos, I've done podcasts, I've done in-person speaking engagements, I've written long form articles. At this point, I've now turned a bunch of that into several chapters in my book. So the reality is that I still have people coming back, even if they've heard portions of this before. And then I have a bunch of net new people. So I actually think the cannibalization is pretty limited unless you're basically trying to put paid ads. Like let's say you have $100,000 for paid ads, and then you decide I'm going to do 50 for this piece of content and 50 for this piece of content. Like even then you're not really necessarily cannibalizing the audience because you're basically just splitting the budget. So it's pretty rare that you would be cannibalizing the audience from a content perspective, maybe from an ads perspective. But yeah, I actually wouldn't worry about that too much because most people aren't going to see it or remember it. And it's really only problematic if you've got a very limited budget and you're trying to spread it too thin across your promotion channels.
Yeah, and that's definitely a sore spot for me because as a product marketer, we're always trying to share messages about new features, new products, and you realize that even if you speak about it 10, 15, 20 times, people still don't know that you have some of those features, right? And so cannibalization is definitely, you know, the more you get the message out, the better, because likely someone has not seen that message from you.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a good question here from Kwan of, let's see, let me pull it up. You had mentioned like next action for the audience. Are you seeing that from their point of view, or is it from your point of view as a business?
From their point of view as the audience. So I'll give an example of this. One of my pet peeves is the CTA learn more. Like, what's going to happen when I click that link? Am I watching a video? Am I downloading a PDF? Am I contacting sales? Like what is happening, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive, but I always actually say give the audience the option not to buy. Make it very explicit. Like go over here if you want to buy with explicit CTAs like contact sales, book a demo, request an RFP, right? Or go over here and read an article, download a PDF, watch a video, register for free, right? That tells me exactly what I'm going to do. As an audience member, I now know if I click this set of buttons, I'm choosing to buy. If I click this set of buttons, I'm expecting not to buy, right? So it should be from the audience's perspective, and the explicit CTAs should make it very clear which action they are trying to take.
Yeah, just be more intentional and clarify exactly what their journey is going to be, right? And so
exactly, because you're not tricking anyone into buying, right? Like if I think I'm going to learn more and it sends me to contact sales, like no, just because you flashed up a contact sales form does not mean I'm suddenly like, you know what? I was trying to learn, but now I'm trying to buy. Like you're not tricking anyone into buying anything. So this should definitely be from the audience perspective.
Yeah, that's actually, it makes me think a lot because when you say learn more, as a marketer, you're thinking, okay, they want to learn more about my product, but that may not be how they perceive learn more, right? Like the visitor on your website. So,
well, I mean, this presentation is a perfect example, right? If somebody puts in the chat, hey, where can I learn more? Does that automatically mean that they're ready to buy my book? That they have money and desire to buy my book? Like if I told you the only way to learn more about this was to buy my book, you'd probably be pretty annoyed. You're saying, I can't get the recording of this session. I can't get a copy of the slides. I can't connect with you on LinkedIn. There's no free articles, really. The only way for me to learn more is to buy the book. Like that feels very disingenuous, right?
Yep. That's part of that debate is whole gated, non-gated content. Like people want access to stuff, right? So we have time for maybe one quick question, and maybe this kind of ties into the book a little bit. But we have Susan here who asked, "How do I make sure I'm setting up my playground correctly?" And so, is there a quick way that you can answer this, Ashley? Because I'm sure there's a lot that goes into making sure you're setting it up everything correctly.
Sure. My quippy answer, of course, is like, buy the book. But no, that would be, again, as we just discussed, very disingenuous. What I'll say in the 22 seconds we have left is go back to the audience, the foundational questions about the audience. What are their pain points? What are their needs? How exactly does your solution help them? And that includes the practices and processes that they need to be successful, and where are they finding that information? So really focusing in on the audience and answering those questions will get you to the right way.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, Ashley, I really appreciate the walkthrough of your playground and how everything works from a repurposing perspective. This has been super informative. Like I said, I was taking a lot of notes. I'm sure the audience found a lot of great insight in this. So really appreciate it. For the audience here, we have some great sessions coming up. The next one is going to be with Stacy from Hootsuite, who shares how she has repurposed webinars to drive on-demand and SEO traffic. So definitely tune in. I think that's going to kick off in a few minutes now. But again, Ashley, appreciate the time and thank you for joining us at Camp Goldcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks all. See you in the next session.